Welcome. This is the first part of our three-part series on the Josstice League. I'm sure future editing Brett will give us a nice, cool intro for this little series.
I'm sure he will. He's a sweet dude.
He is. You know, that guy, the future guy, is always on it. So.
Oh, yeah. Future guy is tight, like a fat man in a Speedo.
Yeah, I'm not sure if this is going to be coming out as Patreon or if it's going to be just extra footage or extra stuff from us on the regular channel. Who knows how this is going to look out exactly, but Brett and I both have a passion for DC superheroes in general, but, you know, DC has always been something that we've related to for a long, long time, just as much as we've related to for Boy Meets World. And so a few years ago when Josstice League, the Snyder Cut, came out, we both kind of looked at each other and went, should we have just a regular conversation about this, or should we sit down and just record this? So we've made little comments here and there over the past couple of years on our thoughts on the movie. I have a very strong feeling of what Brett feels about this movie. I think it's very similar to how I feel about this movie. So we're going to get into some of that stuff. So for the first part, we're going to talk about just the Josstice League with Joss Whedon and the Snyder Cut of Josstice League, and not really going into too much details of what specifically happens in this movie compared to that movie and all that jazz, but like what's missing from one movie to the next movie, but just a general discussion of we have two movies that have the same title but are completely and 100% two very different movies.
Indeed.
So we just want to have a conversation about what are some of the things that one has and the other one doesn't have, and what is it about the culmination that is the Snyder Cut of why that occurred, I guess, from our vantage point as fans, because we are not the Snyder bros that went on social media and on Twitter and just every single day tweeting at Warner Brothers. And
I don't think I once tweeted release the Snyder Cut hashtag. I don't think I'm fairly active on Twitter, and I don't think I ever tweeted that once.
I might have done it like 2 or 3 times at most. It was I think it was mostly whenever the whole cast put out a thing hey, we have something, get this going. That's the only time I'll just retweet it.
Yeah. Okay.
It's just a simple clicking of the button is all that I looked at.
Yeah, I'll take that back. When Ray Fisher was sharing about that, I think I did. I think I did with Ray Fisher when he put that out. And yeah, I mean, I'm not a Snyder bro myself. I'm a fan of Zack Snyder's work, but I'm not a Snyder bro, not necessarily a Snyder apologist. I mean, to this day, 300 is still never going to be in my top 25 films of all time. But I do appreciate Zack Snyder as a filmmaker, and he has a fantastic vision, and he is hands down one of the best cinematographers' eyes that I have seen in possibly my lifetime. He has just a fantastic eye as an artist.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's important to start from the beginning. When Man of Steel came out, I remember leaving the theater being like, oh my gosh, that was an incredible experience. I loved it. That was great. I felt compelled and gripped. And then I go talk to some of my friends who are the same age as me, and they go, oh, that movie was boring. I fell asleep. I'm like, did we watch the same movie? I don't understand. So it's just this real dividing line of because everyone used to just be superhero fans. Mm-hmm. Everyone I would talk to was just oh yeah, I went and saw that one. I saw that one. You go out and see everything and support everything. And then it's just after Man of Steel, it felt like people were like, no, I'm going to stick over here, mostly with Marvel. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to go this way because, I didn't like that movie. So why would I like more coming out with them?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And with Marvel's success was great in that it allowed comic book franchises to be successful. Mm-hmm. And they proved that with Iron Man, you could take a B tier character and experience real success. I mean, all credit to Robert Downey Jr., to Kevin Feige, to, oh man, I am totally blanking on director.
Jon Favreau.
Yeah, Favreau. Man, that dude is fantastic, and I blanked on his name. But credit to Favreau and the entire team behind it. I mean, they did a fantastic job. But when you break them down, so many movies within the Marvel Cinematic Universe are very cut and paste in how they're put together. And, they did build to a climax. They did build upon each other to an extent. And they did build out parts of their universe, and they did have an end point in mind. But people got so used to that idea that to build anything else in a different way was all of a sudden it was completely wrong. It wasn't viewed as, oh, this is just different. It was viewed as, this is wrong and it can't be successful.
Correct.
And I take umbrage at that. And not just because I'm a big DC fan or because I like Snyder or because I am a Superman fan, but I know of the vision behind Zack Snyder's plan and Christopher Nolan's plan with what was behind Man of Steel. This was a multi-part story. This was not here's one movie, and then if it does well, we'll release a sequel. This was part one of a multi-part story. And yes, this is old man yelling at the sky, but we have a very shortened attention span. And we don't have the attention span to say, oh, hey, here's chapter 1. Let's wait for chapters 2, 3, and 4 to come out. But yeah, I left the first trailer feeling excited. And when the movie came out, a lot of people complained that Zack Snyder doesn't understand Superman. But the big knock on Superman is he's too powerful and you have to find other ways to get to him.
Correct.
And yeah, you can disagree with how Jonathan Kent dies, or you can disagree with when Clark asks him, should I have let them all die? And his answer is maybe, I don't know. But this is a human being trying to struggle with, how do I protect my son and still introduce him to what's good and dangerous about the world. And, it's Zack understands what is the hero's journey. And this was the first step in the hero's journey. And we see a superhero, we see a young Clark Kent just learning who he is, learning and discovering his powers. And we see hope begin to dawn. And so, I mean, I left, like you said, I left that first viewing jazzed, excited. And honestly, yeah, I love the original Superman 79. Christopher Reeve's fantastic. His ability to shift between Clark Kent and Superman is, to this day, still very much a high mark. Brandon Routh stepped into those boots very well in Superman Returns, and his taking on that continuation in the Arrowverse in Crisis of Infinite Earths. Yes, huge geek moment here. Just built on that. Fantastic. But even though I grew up on Christopher Reeves and Dean Cain and Lois and Clark and George Newbern and
Ben Affleck.
No, I'm going animated series with not Weber. I'm going to drop it in later because I'm blanking on.
Oh, you're fine.
Future Brett's going to give the right name here.
No, I know you're, but because the animated
Tim Daly,
the animated Superman is almost like this is who Superman is for many generations.
Yeah, they got it. Tim Daly. I mean, even though I grew up on all of these guys, Henry Cavill and Zack Snyder do understand Superman, and they did a fantastic job of portraying what a young Superman just discovering who he is and how he fits in what we would understand a modern world to be is, and how it fits. And I personally love that.
Well, I think that's part of it too, though, is that bringing up a Superman now is different than bringing up a Superman in the 70s. The type of parenting you need to do. And you see this in Smallville too, of his parents struggling of like, we just want to have a form of normalcy, and he can't have that.
Oh, no.
And so it's like, how do we help this young man who has all this godlike power to stay humble and to stay kind and to remember that he's still a teenager?
Mm-hmm.
That yes, he has these godlike abilities, but he is still learning and growing and developing and, isn't ready for the world yet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Because I truly feel like Man of Steel is the launching off of what Smallville was. And you see similar, the way they're trying to raise him in both the movie and the show, and they're very similar. It's just a much quicker version of that, because I can imagine Smallville's Martha and Clark and Jonathan, yes, thank you, Ken, almost having those conversations of maybe you should have let those kids die. We don't know.
Yeah, and honestly, by the way, shout out John Schneider. Absolutely fantastic. My favorite Pa Kent. Prior to that, Eddie Callan was my favorite, but John Schneider, my favorite Pa Kent. And John Schneider, fantastic actor. But I can absolutely see those same conversations that John Schneider has or would have had as Kevin Costner has. Those same type of words coming up, because a lot of those same type of situations and questions rose in the early seasons of Smallville. And yes, it was the CW, so they didn't necessarily go that route, but play them out in the same string, and they do.
Well, and you have Jor-El, and you have a computerized version of him. So it's almost like the best version of himself, you could argue. But he is not this is what you will do. This is who you are. You have no choice. He's like, hey, this is what we hoped for you. This is what we prayed about. This is what we desire for you, And I personally feel like once he is able to take both what his computerized birth dad says and what he remembers of what his father had tried to instill in him as what it means to be an American, as a man, all those things, that's when he can be Superman now. And because he couldn't be Superman before until he was able to accept of those two things. Now, in a way, you could argue he doesn't become Superman until Josstice League. So let's quickly just say about the Batman v Superman movie as such, Brett. The goal of the movie was to get the two of them to fight each other, to be at odds, but to reconcile because they see each other as equals. Because throughout the whole movie, they see each other as the problem. And then they have a moment, and I know it gets made fun of, and it's a meme online, but Batman had to see Clark as Clark, not just the man in the sky who brought destruction.
Yeah.
Clark had to see Batman, Bruce Wayne, as just a guy who's trying to make things better and just doesn't always get it right.
Yeah. And okay, there's a few things that people always tend to forget. One, and I'm going to go off on just a couple of, here's my soapbox, because we get in these soapbox in the main podcast all the time.
All right, go for it.
Soapbox number one, Batman killing. Okay. Cinematically, Michael Keaton killed.
Yes.
Go back to Batman Returns very clearly. Okay, first of all,
go back to Batman.
In the original
89.
Batman 89, he killed. Batman Returns, he strapped a bomb to one of the Red Triangle gang's chest and dropped him in a sewer, which then explodes on screen. So we can't argue killing, because cinematically, even though in the comics, Batman has a very strict no killing rule, even in some of his very first appearance in comics, he killed a dude. So we got to throw that out the window. Second, this is a Batman who's been around for 20 years and has seen so much corruption and evil that he is just so worn down. This is the Dark Knight Returns era Batman from Frank Miller, late 1980s. This is the Batman who's been around so much and beaten down so much that he tells Alfred, we've always been criminals. Basically, we're just taking out the ones that are worse. And he's still got a relationship with Commissioner Gordon, but we're just gonna, we work outside of the law. We are criminals. We always have been. We're just cleaning up the streets of the worst. Honestly, there's a part of me that branding the worst of the worst, the human traffickers, and letting prison justice take its course, there is a small part of me that is very human that says, okay, let prison justice take its course on some of those things. I know realistically that is not the right way to go, but there is a very small part of me that says, okay, that is actually kind of a poetic justice thing.
Yeah.
But the whole title of the movie, Batman v Superman, it's not Batman versus Superman. It's Batman v Superman. That is a court legal thing. That is bringing a case against someone else. That is Batman bringing a case against Superman where he says, this is someone who has the ability to wipe us all out. And if we see even a 1% chance, we have to take that as an absolute. He has been broken and battered, and he has seen so much that it's not surprising that he sees this through such a negative lens. And you're right. He needs to be able to see Clark as not just some alien enemy. And with that moment where it's save Martha, Bruce is so blinded by rage and hatred and just seeing Clark as nothing more than an alien that's there to potentially destroy them all. He lost so many good people in that opening sequence in the Battle of Metropolis that he was running into the destruction. And that little girl he saves who lost her parents in his building. This is revenge. This is righteous vengeance in his mind. And, I can't really argue against it because even though it was collateral damage in a battle to save all of humanity, there's a level there that legally there's a collateral damage there.
Well, he's turned himself into a weapon 24 hours a day.
Exactly.
Ready to go at any point, finding what he needs to find to take down Superman.
Yeah.
That is his sole
That is his
purpose.
mission. But this moment, this save Martha, yes, you can argue it's corny, but here's the thing. 1938, 1939, and their parents weren't necessarily there, both of them, until later. But Martha is both of their parents. That is a connection point for this alien who was adopted and this rich boy who has been dealing with childhood trauma of seeing his parents gunned down in front of him for 30 plus years. Clark is not dumb, not big dumb alien. He knows Bruce's history. He knows his mother. This is a man who has built himself on his childhood trauma. To say save Martha is his last ditch effort to not only save his mom, but he went there to try to work with him to work something out. So it's his last ditch effort to connect with him on a human level to show not only that he has humanity himself, but to reach that humanity he hopes is still within Bruce. And for Bruce to hear that, he realizes there's a connection point there.
It wakes him up.
Yeah, it does. And then to have Lois come in and say, that's his mom. I mean, that's, yeah, you can argue corny. You can argue dumb. I don't get on board with that train.
Yeah. No, neither do I. And the thing about the fight is simple. He goes there to find common ground. Batman's not interested.
Mm-hmm.
He goes there to talk to him. Batman's not interested. He goes through and stops everything he throws at him. Basically, almost like as a parent, whenever your child's throwing a temper tantrum and you're just like, they're trying to hit you or something, and it doesn't affect you because they're too small, and you're just like, okay, are you done? Do you have your energy out? Like, can we be done with this now? And unfortunately, he found his weakness, kryptonite, finally, and now he's on the ropes.
Mm-hmm.
Now he has to use a little bit more skill. He doesn't have the skill. Batman has the skill. They're more on equal grounds now. So now it's not as easy as I'm just going to, tank through everything you have.
Batman found his kryptonite. He uses Bruce's.
Yeah. So, at the end of the day, it is a great fight between the two of them.
Mm-hmm.
B, it wasn't about which one of them was going to win. And C, most importantly, we had to get to the Doomsday killing Superman.
Yeah.
Or, in a way, killing the Man of Steel, so that way he could be reborn.
Mm-hmm.
So, with all that said, Brett, we both were excited about Justice League because, again, we've always been DC fans, Justice League fans. Justice League cartoon. When you met me as a teenager, it was either Boy Meets World or Justice League that we were watching at your house.
Yep.
Like, it was just a constant. And so when this was announced, and we were excited, and then tragically, Snyder and his wife had to step away from the project.
Mm-hmm.
And that's part of the thing that I don't think is talked about that much is Zack Snyder's wife was so involved in this project, and she would see details of things that he wouldn't always see and make sure that almost that there was a feminine presence in a lot of stuff and make sure that things looked the way that they should look. And because I remember seeing a thing about Man of Steel, and one of the things that his wife was I think her name is Deborah, if I remember correctly, that she was really insistent on is getting Krypton right. And making sure that the language stuff was all good, and the wardrobes that they looked dated and old and majestic still at the same time. And so there's things that she would projects within the movies that she would dive into and make sure were right and good and would all fit in the line. And so when Zack Snyder left, so did his wife leave. So now you have Joss Whedon come in, and Whedon didn't have the same vision for these characters that Snyder does. And to get us going in the right direction, let's just start with The Flash. Because by far, The Flash is so different from Joss Whedon to Snyder. It's night and day.
Oh, yeah.
And to be more direct, it's the way they understand his powers. Because Joss Whedon comes along with it with how every speedster is. Well, the speedster just comes, he moves things, he moves people, and it's fine. Whereas Zack Snyder's like, if you're going as fast as they make it seem to be, people should die if he grabs them. So just grabbing people and moving them is not an option, or at least he doesn't realize if it's an option right now. That's his fear. And you see in the Snyder Cut all this electricity everywhere just as he's moving. You don't have that in the Joss Whedon cut. And I don't even know about the Flash movie that just came out. I didn't get to watch that. But, at least not yet. So it's understanding the differences of the powers and what the Flash has experienced, what he's not experienced, and what it means for him as he is now becoming a part of this team.
And even at a character level, it's not even just the powers. At a character level, one of the key scenes that is missing from Josstice League is the moment where Barry saves Iris Allen from the accident, because in that scene we see Barry applying for yet another job to try and earn enough money to get tuition to get into college for a criminal justice degree. And during the accident, we see a Barry Allen who is practiced enough with his abilities that he is able to move through the glass out into the intersection of the accident, move Iris from midair into a protected position on the ground, and stop the momentum that would have splattered her, snag a hot dog out of the air at the same time, thinking through what would happen after the accident, and then move back into the pet shelter after he's made sure Iris is safe with the hot dog in pocket, for a funny moment. And during the fight scenes and rescuing people, he's confident enough in his abilities and himself as a person that he's not afraid to take on challenges. He knows what his speed can do when he approaches light speed. He knows the danger of what can happen. Whereas in Josstice League, without that scene, we just see someone who is afraid. He's never fought anyone. He has to have Batman tell him just move one person. And with all of that, and of course, then you've got that whole really just aped from one of his Avengers movies where he winds up with his face in Wonder Woman's chest after helping her out.
Yes, we'll get to that.
But you've got this whole misunderstanding of his character between Snyder's Justice League and Josstice League. And a lot of it springs from just that one missing scene where you get to see him and understand his control.
Well, in Snyder's cut, you see the scientific Barry Allen. Because even though he doesn't have, say, the degree and all that jazz and the money that that's Bruce Wayne does, he's a very smart, intellectual person.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, I know that the Flash is a funny character because he's almost too fast. Like his brain moves a little too quickly, so then he just ends up rambling off stuff.
I need friends.
Yes, regardless, he needs friends. But I don't mind in the Josstice League that he needs a little coaching. I'm fine with that.
Oh,
and
yeah, totally fine with that.
It makes sense in the dynamic of a 20-plus-year-old or 20-plus vet Batman coaching brand new superheroes. But we don't get that at all in the Snyder cut because he doesn't need to be coached. He knows his powers. He's tested it, as you said. And Batman just goes, yeah, you know what you're ready to do, and we're fine.
Yeah, and one of the things that does carry on into the Flash, we do see that from a power standpoint, he doesn't need the coaching, but from an emotional life coaching standpoint, we do see some of that continue from Bruce Wayne.
Well, we do see that also in, I think, both versions of the movie, is that it's just a matter of, well, as the Flash, does he need it? Or as Barry Allen, does he need it? And as Barry Allen, he for sure needs emotional support.
Oh, definitely.
He probably needs a counselor.
Oh, I'm sure.
I would say give him some Ritalin as well, but I don't think that would help him whatsoever.
I think he'd burn through that pretty quickly.
Either way, he's a black hole.
Yes.
Yeah.
A snack hole.
But, I will say that probably some of the best scenes in the Snyder cut, or the real Justice League, as I'm going to start referring to it as, come from Barry Allen, where you see Snyder able to use that slow-mo ability that he's perfected over the years, and just how perfect it can look and beautiful. And I'm just going to say it now. If you have not watched the movie, I guess this is the thing, is that this is our pitch for watch Snyder Cut Justice League. This is part one. Watch the movie, because I don't want to spoil anything, but there's a scene at the end that it gets me emotional in a way that most superhero movies don't get me emotional. So that's all I'm going to say. Now, since you brought up Wonder Woman, let's just talk about her for a moment. Because in the Josstice League, there's an antagonisticness to Bruce Wayne and her that I'm not okay with. Like, they almost are like this old married couple, which a few years down the road, I could see that. But like a right away antagonisticness to it doesn't fit with their characters.
Yeah.
The two of them have almost this understanding. It's an unspoken understanding, and they're trying to work together. They try to go about it different ways.
Yeah, and for a shared mission, they are within Justice League. They are trying to work together. Within Justice League, they're almost trying to one up each other. It feels like
It's almost like they're competing for who is in charge.
Mm-hmm.
And that dynamic does not work.
Yeah.
And I guess this is the real point, Brett, that we should say that unfortunately, Joss Whedon tried to Avengerize Justice League.
He really did, and it shows at times.
Yeah. But if he had start to finish wrote the movie and did the movie the way he wanted to do it, I think we probably would have enjoyed it. However,
we may have, yeah.
it was not. The vision changed, and when the vision changes, it can hurt the experience.
Yeah, and Joss came in basically 2/3 of the way through and wanted to rework a good almost half of the movie. I mean, when you compare them side by side, this is a very different end product from what the original vision was.
They essentially shot two different movies that are the same.
Mm-hmm.
No wonder no one wants to come back.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just, yeah, I mean, there's a lot that has come out about Joss Whedon not being a great human. I know that a lot of his art, TV's movies are not bad.
Mm-hmm.
They just, if it's not his vision, I know he does not do well with it.
Yeah. And one of the things that Joss is known very well for is he writes and directs very strong women. His female
Except
characters
for Wonder Woman.
and that's the thing. He did not write her. He did not conceive this version of Wonder Woman. He came in 2 films in, 2/3 of the way on the second film in, and decided to retroactively inject his own version of what Wonder Woman is into what was already established. Mm-hmm. And it very, very much clashes with what had already been established. This is Joss's version of Black Widow and
the Hulk.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean this is not Joss's best female character at all.
Well, I mean, if you look at each of the characters outside of Superman, they're all different versions of what they ended up being in the Snyder Cut. Mm-hmm. But that's because finally, when he's revived, regardless, he is Superman. Mm-hmm. Now he's wearing a different suit, and I know it's a big hullabaloo, but I mean, he is the same. The only real difference between the Superman you have in Josstice League and Snyder Cut is Josstice League has to have people talking during every single fight.
Yeah, that's an Avengerification that I just can't get on board with, because not everyone needs to be able to make quips. Not everyone needs to have that going on their fighting style, because that's not every superhero.
Right.
Not everyone's Iron Man and and Spider-Man, and not everyone's like that. That's not every superhero's personality. Right.
And it's the difference between what is a Marvel superhero and what is a DC superhero. Mm-hmm. And the two of them are not the same.
Not at all.
And it's okay. And I think the thing that Joss didn't understand truly is that we're not talking about these men and Amazon that are struggling and they're just, superhero was thrown upon them. These are godlike beings, and they know and they understand their powers, and they know how dangerous their powers are. Mm-hmm. Where you could argue in all of the Avengers movies, they don't care. They're going to keep pushing their powers. They're going to keep pushing their abilities. They're going to see how far they can push it, and it's never enough. If you look at Iron Man from the first movie where he built a Mach 1 in a cave to the last one that you have in Endgame, those are completely different technologies, and he pushed it way too far. So it's like, that's the difference between, say, Iron Man compared to, say, Batman. Batman is always who he is. He will never change. That's what in the comics and other shows, what drive people crazy about him is like, you will never change. You will always be this person. He's like, yes. Mm-hmm. Where Iron Man is like, I will always keep building, and then hit peak eventually. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I mean, I don't want to complain just straight up, because there are parts of Josstice League that I enjoyed. The problem is that most of the parts I enjoyed are in the Snyder Cut.
Which really begs the question, how much of that is really anything to do with Joss Whedon?
Well, and there's certain shots in Josstice League that you go, oh, that must have been a Snyder shot. And then it's not in the Snyder Cut at all. So then you're like, did Joss try to shoot things like Snyder? Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't know. Like, it's just, there's times when the angles are just off enough. So when you watch like side by side comparisons, you're like, why did we adjust the angles this much? Like, I don't understand.
Yeah. Beats me.
Yeah. It's almost like The Room with them shooting cameras side by side, the HD and the regular.
Now, I will give some credit to Joss. Taking away the whole CGI upper lip. Choosing
Mustache Gate.
Yeah, Mustache Gate. The handheld cell phone footage that he chose to record, the new footage, was the kids that are interviewing Superman for their podcast or whatever it is, where they ask Superman, where it's kids talking to Superman after he saves whatever it is. I like that he understands how Superman would interact with some kids who just want to ask him some questions.
Yeah, for sure.
I like that moment that he adds in there, that kind of flashback type of thing. I like that. It works.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, we talked about this last night while we were watching Snyder Cut. It feels like every single writer and director wants to have their Batman movie, their Superman movie, and aren't willing to concede that other visions are okay. And that's the thing, is like, I think Joss Whedon wanted to have his Superman scenes and his Batman scenes. That's why you have a whole 5 minutes of him fighting a parademon randomly in the beginning before he has a giant beard.
They smell fear.
Yeah. I smell fear.
Yeah, let's leave the burglar tied up on the rooftop.
So it's almost like they wanted to have their movie of those two.
And that's one of the things where I really love the Snyder Cut, is because he was very vocal from the beginning that Josstice League really was a cyborg story.
Yeah.
And I found so much appreciation for Ray Fisher, especially when the Snyder Cut came out, and I felt so cheated when I saw that compared to Josstice League.
Booyah!
But there is so much depth in Justice League that the narrative just flows through Cyborg, and especially the framing at the end where he reconstructs the cassette recorder that his father left him, and just that narrative piece where he finally has been able to listen to the advice from his father. He's finally made peace. And you've seen him go through, he understands who he is, and he's accepted this new place in life. And he's finally found comfort, and he's finally been able to exorcise some of these demons. And, he's been through all of this torture and this pain and this stuff that we couldn't possibly imagine. But he's finally found peace with his father and is willing to listen to that advice. That's just such a powerful moment.
Yeah, I agree completely. I think one thing that would be helpful for us to have in this discussion is the difference of from the time the movie starts to credits. Because for the Josstice League, you're looking at about an hour and 50 minutes-ish. So roughly 100 minutes. Mm-hmm. With the Snyder Cut, excluding credits and the extra stuff at the end, you're looking at, like, I'm mostly thinking of like from Superman, revealing himself to flying away. You're looking at about 3 hours and 40 minutes. So about 220 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So you're looking at double and then some of actual like story time. And, part of the problem is that we can't fully blame Josh for all the decisions made.
Yeah, I mean, there is studio interference.
Oh, yeah. The studio was so heavily involved in this and wanted to be less time so that way they could be in more screens and but they decided to go with like a 2-hour slot, and consistently almost every single superhero movie up to that point has been beyond 2 hours.
Mm-hmm.
So even if you gave him an extra 20, 30 minutes to play around, maybe we could have had a better movie.
Very possibly.
But the studio didn't want that. The studio wanted to get the movie out as soon as possible. So, I mean, Josh is not fully to blame for the vision changing and for the movie being different. The studio has to bear some of that weight. There's no way around it.
Mm-hmm.
And also the studio has to bear the weight of saying, we will never release the Snyder Cut, blah, 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 blah. And then HBO Max saying, yes, we'll release it. And now we have, again, the studio deciding we are rebranding, we're restarting, we're doing anew. Although we still have some other movies that are down the pipe that, are still kind of connected-ish, but not fully connected.
Yeah.
And so here's my pitch, Brett. If we were to go back in time into 2016, and let's just say after Josstice League came out, if DC came out at that time and said, you know what, guys, this experiment didn't work. We have decided that we are going to shut down. We will have no new movies over the next year and a half, and we are going to restart. I think the fans could have accepted that, because they would have been upset of, oh, we're ending, but hey, eventually we'll get a new. And that's okay. That could have been fine in 2016.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that we had Infinity War Endgame come out, and then we had the Snyder Cut come out. We've had this awkward, nothing really big, nothing really mind-blowing coming out. So like from Endgame being done, and now there's no real direct good path for Marvel to go, this is the time to actually, hey, we're going to give it a shot. We're going to let Snyder do one more movie, and that'll be it for him, and then we're going to do new things after that. I think people could have accepted that, Brett, but we didn't. Because the studio decided, we know better. We want to start doing what Marvel did. So do that. Don't let someone like Snyder try to come in and do his thing. Do what Marvel did. Just do it after the fact and reset. You could do that. They didn't. I don't know. So yeah, I think this is a good spot to end, Brett, where I know we didn't talk about this beforehand, but let's do like a quick, what would you actually grade, say, the Joss Whedon cut compared to the Snyder cut? And I guess, is there a difference between after you watch the Snyder cut of how you now grade the Joss Whedon cut?
Oh, there's a big difference after watching the Snyder cut, how I grade. Before I watched the Snyder cut, I probably would have put Josstice League at about a B-.
Yeah, I was thinking B as well.
Yeah. After I saw Snyder cut, it drops drastically to about a D. Yep.
I mean, it's borderline like as low C as you can be to a D. Like it's almost unwatchable now in a way, because you can't unsee things. And in the turmoil that was of Josstice League. And we didn't even touch on Ray Fisher and all the stuff that came out about the way that Joss Whedon treated him and how horrible he was to him and basically almost ruined his acting career. Because this was Ray Fisher's like first chance of like being an actor and you know, what should have been a launching pad for him to continue to go out and do bigger things and maybe be more of an Oscar type actor, just gone.
Yep.
And you could argue that Joss Whedon and the studio are the reason for that.
Yep.
It's almost like Warner Brothers should give a new movie for him so that way he can they can make up for how horrible he was treated.
Yep. I agree.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I appreciate that grading because that's how I felt as well. It's like, yeah, I liked it. And then as the Snyder Cut came out, I'm like, gosh.
This just shows how badly that was slapped together.
Yeah. Well, and like things like Steppenwolf.
Oh, Steppenwolf. Oh, man. That was just looking at what it was supposed to be versus what we got in the theaters. It was just like I wasn't crazy about Steppenwolf in theaters. I was like, okay, it really, really reminds me a lot of Ares from Wonder Woman. But okay, whatever. But seeing what it was supposed to be, because that was definitely not the Steppenwolf at the end of Batman v Superman.
Correct.
But looking at it in theaters and then seeing what we actually got in Snyder Cut, that really was a disappointment.
Yeah, and that's the thing is that it's just you walk away from the original Josstice League and you go, well, that was good. That was kind of Marvel-like. Maybe Marvel people will be interested and maybe we'll get more. And nothing. No Marvel people wanted to see it and anything like that. And there was just so many jokes. Like, how many times during the movie yesterday were we quoting the Joss Whedon random lines out of nowhere? Like, that didn't need to be there.
Yep.
That just felt right not having words.
Oh, it felt so nice not having to have a joke shoehorned in.
Yeah. Well, and the amount of times you and I, like, we've watched this movie plenty of times now.
Oh, yeah.
Whether we watch the whole thing all at once or just watch segments, you know, we've watched it enough that, like, we're not laughing super out loud. But the first time you watch the Snyder Cut, there's parts you're laughing so hard and you're like, why is this so funny? And just the jokes don't land as well in the Josstice League. They just don't. Some of the jokes that do land were from the Snyder Cut in the Josstice League.
Yep.
So all of this is to say, friends, if you have watched the Josstice League or have not watched it, don't at this point. Go watch the Snyder Cut, and then let's get into part 2 where we'll go through the Snyder Cut. We're not going to get into every single detail because, oh my gosh, it's 4 hours. But we got plenty to talk about. We're really excited. And as you can tell from this already, we're very passionate about this, almost as much as we're passionate about Boy Meets World. So
that's right.
So join us for part 2. And I'm sure Brett's going to hit future Brett is going to hit some cool music from here. And
future Brett's got some slick beats.
Yeah. So join us next time as we get into part 2, the actual Snyder Cut.
Parto do so.